fellow patriots, back to our channel here with my brother-in-law Saul. We got some great topics to talk about. Saul, how you feeling tonight, buddy?
I'm feeling great. Hello, fellow patriots. A pleasure to be here with you guys again, giving you some vital information. Let's make it happen.
Yeah, so we got some important topics to talk about, but before we get into it, please don't forget to hit the like and subscribe and share our channel if you like what we're talking about. So on August 22nd of this year, Dr. Anthony Fauci announced that he was stepping down towards the latter end of this month, or excuse me, of this year. It's interesting because the world went into something unusual, went into a pandemic in 2020. And at the head of this movement, or at the head of what was happening here in the United States, Dr. Fauci seemed to be controlling everything that was going on, making recommendations, making suggestions, and so on and so forth. And based on those recommendations, our society has changed. In many ways, fear gripped people. In many ways, laws were instituted that violated some people's rights. And definitely religious freedoms. And what we're going to do is we're going to take you back to the beginning of how all this took place and how the events unfolded, and unfortunately the impact that that his direction had on the medical community, on science, and on overall. Right, I'm one who have begun to question medical professionals based on the things that have happened. And it's really sad because I used to not do that. Now I have to understand people's political stance before I get their medical advice. So let's just dig into it. So what I want to do is I want to start with the World Health Organization. I want to go over three things that kicked us off in January 2020. Number one was the praising of China for what they did, how they handled the outbreak, how they contained the outbreak over there in China, and then their transparency. Let's go ahead and dig into our first video before you respond.
I will praise China again and again because its actions actually helped in reducing the spread of coronavirus to other countries. The commitment of the political leadership, starting from the number one, from the president himself. And I said it in my speech, the level of his knowledge is very, very amazing. China is doing its best, and that helps. Of course, in addition to that, we call on all member states to also give that kind of attention, both political and technical. And that can help us to prevent the spread of this virus and control it as soon as possible.
There you have it. What are your thoughts on watching that video now, 2 years afterwards, looking back on it and seeing his words?
Well, we all know, looking back at that video, that his words were absolutely erroneous, to say the least. Or, in my opinion, he was blatantly lying right there and trying to praise, communist China, to say that they were handling the situation accordingly, when we know that wasn't the case. We know that this most likely was released on purpose from the Wuhan lab. I mean, we all know that at first, around that time, they were all censoring us and saying that it was a conspiracy. But we all know that Tedros Adhanom, he is in bed politically with the Chinese communist government. So for him to say that back then and give the world assurance that China was doing the right thing and not criticizing them, when they should have had a lot of criticism by their handling of the situation, by everything. I mean, by being pretty much the guilty party with this debacle. So again, Carlos, it just shows how some of these elite groups are just working together, arm to arm.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. When I first heard him praise China, number one, no one should be praising any communistic government or any communistic leader. Let's start there. As Cubans, as descendants of Cubans, and you being directly from Venezuela, we know what those tyrants do. So that threw a red flag for me up immediately. And I started to think, I'm like, wait a minute, when have we ever praised communism or attach it to communism, right? So that threw a red flag. And obviously, as the time rolled on, we saw that China didn't deserve any praise because they didn't contain the virus. It actually, obviously, it got out, and they weren't being transparent at all. As a matter of fact, the United States have been trying to get into China to determine the origination, and each time the Chinese government has said no, 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 no. So where's the transparency? Now let's go real quick and let's take a listen to who praising China for their transparency, just so that the audience doesn't think we're making this up.
I'm declaring a public health emergency of international concern over the unprecedented response. As I have said repeatedly since my return from Beijing, the Chinese government is to be congratulated for the extraordinary measures it has taken to contain the outbreak, despite the severe social and economic impact those measures are having on the Chinese people. We would have seen many more cases outside China by now, and probably dozens, if it were not for the government's efforts and the progress they have made to protect their own people and the people of the world. In many ways, China is actually setting a new standard for outbreak.
What are your thoughts?
My thoughts, Carlos, is, again, from the beginning, this was a whole complete debacle for them to go back and forth on showing that they didn't know what they were doing to begin with, even though they were the quote unquote experts. They still don't know what the hell they're doing, in my opinion. So for him to say that the C19, is not transmissible person to person, and they retweeted that, like you accurately said, back in January 14th of 2020, it just shows you how from the beginning they played this wrong. And as things kept going, they continue moving the goalposts. So those are my thoughts. We already knew just by looking at this individual that, he is compromised by praising a communist, nation like China. That already tells you a lot, that, tells us what we need to know.
Yeah, and we can see right here during this tweet from January 14th of 2020, it says preliminary investigations conducted by the Chinese authorities have found no clear evidence of human-to-human transmission. Okay, so it apparently seems like what's going on is the World Health Organization is taking China at face value. And then what's happening is they're saying it from their microphone, and then the CDC listens to it, and they say it from their microphone, they repeat it, and then Dr. Fauci hears that, and he repeats it, and then it gets to the American people the way that it was sent from originating China. So no one validated, no one verified, they just went along with whatever China said, which to me validates what you said about this guy being, and this organization being in the pocket of the Chinese government, which is very sad, and it put a lot of us at risk.
Most definitely, Carlos. I mean, it's absolutely disgusting, in my opinion, how Tedros, again, continue praising China, the Chi-coms, as I call them, the Chinese communists. So how he never criticized them at all, how they never had a clear approach to investigating the root cause of the China flu. I mean, it's absolutely unbelievable. So moving on to the third one, Carlos, China was able to contain the C19. I believe you have a video on that, correct?
Yes, we already saw that. So let's actually move on to Fauci praising China and saying that they were being transparent.
Sounds good.
All right. So January 24th news. China is being quite transparent, says NIH head. And I remember seeing the video for this. I don't think this actually has the video. It's just an article. Yeah, it looks like it's just an article. But I remember seeing him saying, where he was in a multi-panel interview, that China was being much more transparent this time around than they were back back, when I guess SARS took place, and they were being shady and not really giving us information and so on and so forth. So again, here's another example of these people getting it wrong. These are supposed to be the professionals, right? These are supposed to be the top and the highest of highs. And here they are now. Again, hindsight's 2020. We can look back and say, hey, they got it wrong. Now, you might be a defender and say, well, they didn't know, and it's the information and so on. Listen, you're at a professional level. You're getting paid 6 figures plus to handle this, right? He's been the NIH head for decades, right? He's been in this government position since like the 80s or something like that, right? When AIDS started breaking out or something like that. And then to tell me that, oh, well, we didn't know, and we just got information. Listen, as a professional, if you don't know, you don't come out and say things as if you didn't know. You come out and say,
exactly.
Hey, this is something new. This is something that we're unfamiliar. We're tracking it. We're looking at it. We're unsure. Take all the precautions that you think you need to until we understand. But don't start saying things like, praising communist China and saying how they've been transparent and clear and there's no transmission. It's sad. It's really sad.
It's sad, Carlos. I completely agree, because they are basically showing their true cards, who they are, basically that they are entanglement with this Chi-Coms. And Anthony Fauci, I mean, we already know that he has had his own agendas, going back to his many decades, as a bureaucrat that he is from Washington. We know that this little elf also didn't criticize China, the Chi-Coms at all. So for him to say exactly what Tedros said, it seems that exactly how you called it earlier, they were lying. Whatever China wanted to be said, it went down to the WHO, and then it went down to the NIH, Fauci, and then dispersed, by the propagandists like CNN, MSNBC, and all these leftist rigged media. And again, the people bought that, or not everybody, because we didn't. Those of us that are awake and know what's going on, from the beginning, we questioned this and we saw that this was a fraud.
Yep, there was even a commercial I saw, CNN promoting Chinese propaganda and saying how Chinese doctors were going and at the front line of this and trying to do their best to help out. And well, they caused it. I mean, if I burn somebody's house down, or if I set it on fire, and then I come out and get the hose and start hosing the house down and turn off the fire, do I really deserve credit for that? I'm the one who started the fire. That makes no sense.
Exactly. Exactly. That is a great analogy.
And then moving forward, it was not just Dr. Fauci, it was Dr. Birx as well. And I remember seeing her press conference where she was like, they were going to take a liberal count to the C-19. So if you got into a car accident and you died because of the car accident and you had C-19, you were going to be counted as a C-19 death, which is absolutely absurd. And we have, I don't know if we got an article or video, but let's check it out.
Sounds good.
Burke says government is classifying all deaths of patients with coronavirus as COVID-19 deaths, regardless of the cause. I mean, and it's true, because like I said, I mean, we have the article here, but I heard her say it in a press conference, and I'm quoting, they're going to take a liberal approach to the COVID count. I mean, my goodness, isn't that going to inflate the numbers? And I think it did.
Misreported by coronavirus because of either testing or standards for how they're characterized.
So I think in this country, we've taken a very liberal approach to mortality. And I think the reporting here has been pretty straightforward over the last 5 to 6 weeks. Prior to that, when there wasn't testing in January and February, that's a very different situation and unknown. There are other countries that if you had a pre-existing condition, and let's say the virus caused you to go to the ICU and then have a heart or kidney problem, some countries are recording that as a heart issue or a kidney issue and not a COVID-19 death. Right now, we're still recording it, and we'll I mean, the great thing about having forms that come in and a form that has the ability to mark it as COVID-19 infection, the intent is right now that if someone dies with COVID-19, we are counting that as a COVID-19 death.
It certainly did, Carlos. I mean, for her to say this already from the beginning, and for her to be one of the top physicians, working along, Anthony Fauci, or how I call him, Fauci the fraud. It's absolutely incredible for them to have the audacity to mention this in the beginning. And she recently, which I'm sure we'll touch bases later on in the segment, but she recently came out and admitted that the jabs basically don't work, and they knew this, and they exaggerated their efficacy. So we already know she's also another bureaucrat, leaning, big time towards the left. Her and Fauci the fraud, we know that they're Trump haters, and they hated Trump since the beginning. So it all tangles back together, Carlos.
Yeah, it's very alarming, looking back at it. For the past 2 years, we've been in this situation, and to see all this stuff, and people like me and you, we were telling people, we're like, look, hey, look up, and they didn't want to. They just wanted to, keep not only the mask over their nose but over their eyes as well. So it's pretty sad.
Over their eyes. Exactly. We told them, hey, we raised the alarm. We're raising the alarm. We're making the siren sound. At least do your research and just go along with what they're telling you, with the official quote unquote, a narrative. Do your research, try to see how things are going. But a lot of people didn't hear us, and they went along with the Nazi jab.
Yep. And here's the second red flag that I had when we were talking about how do we tackle C-19 and the vaccines and so on and so forth. Like I'm not anti-vax. I've been vaccinated since a little kid. I had all my shots, whatever the case may be, right? Because we were at a different time back then, right? It's not this experiment that's going on. It seems to be going on right now. But when they came out and they said, you know what, we're giving immunity essentially to these companies like Pfizer and Moderna and all that stuff, should someone get an adverse effect, you can't turn around and sue them. When I saw that, I said, no, I'm not taking anything. Are you kidding me? What happens if I take it and something happens to me? Who's gonna take care of my family then after that?
Exactly. Amen. Yeah. I mean, for them to just say out, blatantly say there's no repercussion if anything goes bad with a shot, that already said a lot, Carlos. So it's absolutely disgusting what Deborah Birx and Anthony Fauci did.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what happens is, does that give me trust? Right here goes right here. COVID, Pfizer, Moderna, and other vaccine makers get legal immunity for some time. It wasn't for some time. I mean, maybe this one initially came out, but nothing's really happening to these people, and because they're trying to throw shade. Like there's been articles, and maybe we cover it in a different section, where young people, healthy people are mysteriously dying, heart condition, pulmonary condition, whatever the case may be. And heaven forbid if you attach it or associate or even think that it's attached to the jab, you're going to get censored, you're going to get a 30-day ban, you're going to get kicked off of social media, et cetera, et cetera. Heck, this video might get kicked off of social media at some point. So it's really alarming and really concerning.
It is. And Carlos, an audience, on that point, I actually personally know a radio host here in the Tampa Bay area. That's all I'm going to say. I'm good friends with him. And he is awake like us. Unfortunately, he cannot express his views on the radio show. They literally told him, the owner of the radio station got that from above him, where they literally told this radio host not to talk bad about the jab, not to question the jab, or they will get reprehended. So this shows you that this is an entire apparatus from the top of censorship, that this is not good, and they want to cover the truth. That is what's happening, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, and that brings us to our second section of this video, or this episode, right, is the censorship that's going on, right? It all started with a pair of medical doctors over in California who said, hey, look, we're being pressured to count people that shouldn't be counted in this toll or whatever. We're being pressured to count them in even though they shouldn't be counted in. And they had some data that counteracted the narrative that was coming from obviously the CDC and Fauci and Burke and all these people. And they had a press conference, and what happened? They got shut down. That press conference, you tried to put it up on this channel or like on YouTube or Facebook or whatever, and they would take it down. So we had those 2 doctors from California. We had a number of doctors who went to Capitol Hill and said, look, we've got alternate data. We've got other methodologies. We've got other things that are showing promising signs. We've got patients that we've helped cure. I've got like a high 90% cure rate or whatever. What did they do? They demonized. I remember there's this one lady, she's a doctor obviously, and she was, I'm not sure if she was from Nigeria or some African country. And let me tell you, the nasty things that the media said about her, they called her that she was into witchcraft, and they just smeared her, whatever her religious beliefs were, just because she was going against the C19 narrative. It's absolutely disgusting. Then on top of that, any alternative medicines. I mean, we had DeSantis here really shouting, and I don't remember, and I don't want to put the medicine that was being promoted, because again, this will get shut down, right? It goes to show exactly what we're talking about. And it was an alternative form of medicine. And actually, my kid's grandmother suffered. She actually passed away, and the hospital refused to give her that medicine because it was too political. Are you kidding me? Too political? A medicine is too political? Why? Because Trump said it was good, because Trump said it helped, and somebody has to die because of politics? That's absurd. And then to put the cherry on top, again, the censorship of adverse effects from anyone that had, and there were a number of cases of people that came out and they got shut down, the links were eliminated, they were banned, you can't question whatsoever. It's almost like C19, or the vaccine for C19 was, they should have named it Jesus, because like you really couldn't say anything bad about it, you know?
Exactly. It was absolutely alarming how they wanted to cover the truth, to cover an alternative view. Because if you think about it, if they don't have anything to fear, why not allow what our country stands for, democracy? Why not hear the other side of the equation? Why censor these people? Why smear them? Because they are providing an alternative solution, and they actually have data and statistics backing that up. Then, they had it. It just goes to show you, Carlos, that we're fighting against a medical tyranny. We're fighting against Marxists that they don't want the truth out there. And that's what the danger lies. So they want them to go ahead and push this draconian measure of taking the jab. Don't question it. And if you question, we're going to shut you up. We're going to shut you down. We're going to censor you. Absolutely inexcusable, unbelievable, and unacceptable. And hopefully people are waking up to what they did.
Correct.
Crimes against humanity.
Correct. I totally agree with you. Now, how did we get here? How did we get to this level? And we've got to go back to the beginning. We kind of touched a little bit on who, but let's go back to Dr. Fauci, because remember, Dr. Fauci, who doesn't run the United States? But Fauci did, apparently, right? So I remember an interview early on in January where the great Saint Dr. Fauci told the American people that they didn't have to worry about this virus. That the American people had nothing to worry. It wasn't gonna come here. So let's check it out from his own words.
Manageable numbers. Bottom line, we don't have to worry about this one, right?
Well, obviously you need to take it seriously and do the kinds of things that the CDC and the Department of Homeland Security are doing. But this is not a major threat for the people in the United States, and this is not something that the citizens of the United States right now should be worried about.
Wow. Absolutely incredible. I mean, for him to come out and say that and then exaggerate it a week later. I mean, we know that this guy is and has been a fraud, in my opinion. If you guys remember, Carlos, an audience, when he took that stance, not only in that video saying that they didn't have to worry about it, but then the changing the goalposts on the face diaper and the mask to say that first it worked and you should use it, and then it didn't, and then went again to, yeah, you should use it, and then the fourth time say, hey, you need to double or triple mask. I mean, this guy is a joke. We know that he's a bureaucrat, and he's compromised big time.
Yeah, so let's check out what he says there regarding the masks initially, and we'll see the evolution of the change, right, which we already know that part.
People should not be walking around with masks.
You're sure of it? Because people are listening really closely to this.
Right now, people should not be walking. There's no reason to be walking around with a mask. When you're in the middle of an outbreak, wearing a mask might make people feel a little bit better, and it might even block a droplet, but it's not providing the perfect protection that people think that it is. And often, there are unintended consequences. People keep fiddling with the mask and they keep touching their face.
And can you get some schmutz sort of staying inside there?
Of course. But when you think masks, you should think of healthcare providers needing them and people who are ill. Right now, people should not be walking. There's no reason to be walking around with a mask.
Wow, that's probably the only sentence that I agree with that individual.
So again, this is towards the beginning of everything that's going on. And obviously we know that he did a major U-turn from that. You know, oh, you don't have to wear masks because they're really not gonna protect you. But then like a couple of months later, he goes, no, you gotta double wear masks because that just makes sense. And well, if you wear one mask, you wear two, and you wear 3 and 4 and 5, and who knows, right?
Great impression, by the way, Carlos. That's on point.
I mean, the guy's constantly changing his goalposts. I mean, we've talked about this before, where the left constantly changes the goalposts when they get caught in something. If something doesn't work, it's this, and then no, it's not that. It's actually this, and then I meant this, and so on and so forth. So here's another one. Let's take a look at how if you get the jab, you're protected. You don't got to worry about it no more.
Dr. Anthony Fauci is the chief medical advisor for President Biden, director of National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases at the National Institute of Health. Earlier today, he warned the new Delta variant is the greatest threat to eliminating COVID-19 in the United States, and he joins me now. Let's start with that right now. You know, a few months ago, I started taking up a kind of fairly bullish banner on COVID because the vaccines look so efficacious, and particularly as deployment got better, it really felt like, okay. The first time that I've started to feel bearish again is in the last few weeks, and it's because of these numbers. This is 14-day COVID changing cases in the states with the highest change. Missouri, 55%, 53, Arkansas, 46, Utah, 24, Arizona, 8. How worried are you about that?
I'm quite concerned at states and people who don't get vaccinated, Chris. The situation is so clear, the data affirm. If you get vaccinated, you are protected, even with the Delta variant, which, by the way, has a greater capacity to spread from person to person. And when you're infected, it has a greater likelihood of giving you serious disease.
So as you just finished hearing, if you get the vaccine, then you're protected even from the Delta variant, right? And we know now, looking back, that that's full of baloney. Because why? No, you needed a booster shot, and then because that didn't work, you needed a second booster shot. And well, it only makes sense that if you get 2 booster shots, you get the 3rd booster shot, and then the 4th one, and then when you inject yourself in the buttocks, you're good to go. I mean, come on. I mean, how many booster shots do we gotta get for you for people to wake up and realize the stuff's not working, man?
Right on. I mean, this guy was and is such a joke. I mean, for him to say such a blatant lie without even having the backing and the studies behind it, and to lie to the American people and the world, about this. Again, it goes back to what I mentioned earlier: crimes against humanity. The Nuremberg Code has been violated by all these scumbags. So this is something that not only does the international community, but the United States Congress and government should look into, at some point. Obviously, we know that it's a rigged, bias right now, that the little L Fauci, he's, arm to arm with Biden and this draconian administration. But at some point, the justice will come to him.
Yeah, let's see what old Sleepy Joe had to say about it.
I do want to play something he said about COVID because he was actually just factually wrong, and I think it's important to point that out. Let's hear what he said.
One last thing that's really important is we're not in a position where we think that any virus, including the Delta virus, which is much more transmissible and more deadly in terms of unvaccinated people, the various shots that people are getting now cover that. You're okay. You're not going to get COVID if you have these vaccinations.
Again, another absolute blatant lie. It seems like they're all on the same page when it comes to lying. It's absolutely unreal, Carlos, how some of our friends and acquaintances and family members on the left, they continue to listen to these people, even though they were lying back and forth. And even though they believe, yeah, I'm going to get the jab to try to not prevent any transmission. But then they got C19 and, you know what? I'm just thankful, that I had it and it lessened the symptoms. So you're right, like you said earlier, they move the goalposts back and forth. They don't have any shame, any accountability. It's absolutely disgusting, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And the interesting part is how CNN did cover that. But did you notice their very passive and nonchalant attitude? Very tranquil. It's like, well, yeah, he got it wrong, so we do want to call him out on that. Let me tell you, if this was Trump, they would have had, Trump says to ingest Lysol, ha 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 ha. They would have blown it out of proportion like they always do, right? Because that's what they do. And so clearly here we've got the experts giving us wrong and false information time and time again. And what happens is, unfortunately, it led to tyrannical government mandates, right? You already mentioned it, how we had the mask mandate, we had the vaccine mandate, we had the booster one. Like if you didn't, in certain places and in certain states, if you didn't get it, you were going to be out of a job. And thank God for Ron DeSantis. Had he not signed the bill protecting us, I would have been on the chopping block, because that's the company that I work for took that decision. They decided to play politics, and they went along with the vaccine mandates, even though Biden said that he wasn't going to do it, and he did. And then they limited whether your gatherings. People had to. My brother-in-law, my other brother-in-law, right? He had to miss my nephew being born because they wouldn't allow him in. And people that passed away, family members couldn't be there. My kids couldn't see their grandmother because of that stuff, right? No holiday gatherings. Don't go to 4th of July. Don't go to Thanksgiving. Don't go to Christmas. But you can go ahead and protest, which was absolutely absurd, and we'll get into that. But before we do, what do you think about these tyrannical mandates that came down from the government?
Carlos and fellow patriots, I mean, this tyrannical, government's mandates, they violated not only the Constitution of the United States of America and the Constitution of many other countries, of course, their respective ones, but not only that, but the human rights, human freedom, human liberty. To have mandates that were so draconian that you had to wear a face diaper in your face, which we know that didn't do or help anything. Droplets like your Lord, and I'm talking to the left by saying that. Very good impression, by the way, Carlos. Dr. Fauci, or the little elf, how I call him, Fauci the fraud, he even admitted that they don't work. And some of the left, they have politicized that face diaper, and they still believe in it, even though it actually causes hypoxia and other germs and things in the mouth. It doesn't help you. C19 can still go through it like a sand going through a fence. I mean, so for some of these governments to violate the human rights, to basically put people out of job in the name of a Chinese virus that had a 97.9% survival rate, higher than the flu, and to fire people because they didn't get an experimental mRNA, DNA altering jab, that's not good. That's something that just shows you how draconian they are. And for some of the people that have supported this and continue supporting this insanity, you should wake up and wake up others around you, because this is not good at all. Thank God, like you said, Carlos, for our great governor, our MAGA and ultra MAGA governor, Ron DeSantis, or how we call him, Ron the Savage, for keeping Florida safe, keeping Florida free, most importantly, and making these decisions to the individual and not to government, because this is the United States of America, the land of the free and the home of the brave.